Good morning, good evening, and welcome everyone. Wherever you are in joining us from in the world today, we welcome you and we thank you for joining us today and taking the time out of your day to join us. We hope you could have joined our last webinar in our two-part webinar with Roambee Transporeon. This is where we spoke about on the 28th of February, we spoke about very much the basics of what is telematic segregation and what is sensor-driven visibility. And this is, if you did miss this, don't worry, because we'll make sure we send this out to you post-event. Whereas this webinar, this is where we're really going to get into the detail of the value of this collaboration, where we're really going to understand, okay, what's the true value that I get from both these solutions coming together. And we're very excited to be presenting this to you today because this is really new ground and this is encouraging collaboration within the industry to bring you that single pane of data that you need for everyone in your supply chains. And we're so excited for you to be here today. And we're so excited to show you this collaboration and the detail of the value you can really gain from this collaboration. A little bit of an intro into me so you know who I am, your host. My name is Scott Mears. I'm the Global Field Marketing Manager at Roambee. I've been a passionate marketer and a mental health advocate for over 8 years, working with multiple startups in varying industries, helping them build and grow their brand and awareness on and offline. And at Roambee, I'm responsible for generating new business and building our brand with our customers and in the industry. Just a little bit of the boring stuff just before we really get the great speakers we have on today. Just a few housekeeping rules. So I just want to go through just a few rules just so you can really make sure you get engaged with this topic and you really get involved and get the most out of today. Number one, if you'd like to chat to any of the speakers today or with any of the attendees, which I do encourage, is please locate to your chat box. It's over there. It's just to your side. And here's where you can chat to everyone in the event and also all the speakers as well. If you have any questions, please do navigate to the Q&A panel. Again, you'll see it right next to the chat. And this is where you can submit any of your questions, which again, I really recommend this. I encourage this. Let's get the juices going. Let's really get engaged today so we can really learn from today's webinar and really get involved. And don't worry, you don't have to wait till the end of the webinar for your questions to be answered. We will be doing short Q&A breaks throughout the webinar to get your questions answered. And if for any reason we're not able to answer them because time isn't permitting, then don't worry. Again, we'll make sure these are answered post-webinar. And the final house rule is if you do end up struggling with any technical issues, they do happen annoyingly, just navigate to the help section and our trusty team will be on board to help you every step of the way. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce both our speakers. I'm very excited with the star-studded speakers we have on today. So first of all, I would like to tell you about Jesper Benecke. He's the Executive Director of Sixfold Transporeon. Jesper has worked for more than a decade in the global semiconductor industry for global leaders such as Texas Instruments, Lumileds, and Seoul Semiconductors. In 2015, Jesper co-founded Gatehouse Logistics, which became the leading full truckload visibility provider in Europe. Jesper's team is focused on building and operating the world's largest real-time data connectivity tissue, providing all involved participants in the supply chain a single plane of data. And moving on to Vidya Subramanian, he's the Vice President of Emerging Technologies at Roambee. Vidya has over 15 years of solution delivery experience. He was featured in the list of Supply Chain Pros to Know, published by Supply Chain and Demand Chain Executive. And at Roambee, he is responsible for bringing emerging technologies in hardware, communication, data, and analytics to enable and optimize digital supply chains. Before Roambee, Vidya was the co-founder and VP Professional Services at Ketone Technologies. He has also held influential and leadership roles at Plexus Technologies, KPMG Consulting, Unisys, and PwC. I'd now like to invite both my speakers on today onto the stage. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Scott.
Really, really happy to have you both on today. I'm really excited to be carrying out this webinar, the second webinar in our series, very much getting into the detail and why you guys are so fantastic for this panel to really get into the detail of the value that this partnership brings to the world of supply chain. So we're really just going to hit it off running. And what I want to do initially with the question, which is going to be to both of you actually, is I really want to just lay out the value proposition. I want to really just lay out that one line of that paragraph value proposition so everyone knows before we get into the devil of the detail. I want to make sure that everyone knows what is the value I'm going to get from this. And then as we move on, we'll get into more detail of the identified use cases and industries. So I would like to ask, first of all, you, Jesper, I'll go to you with this question is, what is the value proposition for a company that adopts both telematics aggregation and sensor-driven visibility today?
Yeah, thanks for that, Scott. It's a great question. I'm going to probably answer the one third of it. The way I see it is visibility over the last few years has become more different disciplines. So you have visibility where we typically have been connecting into the trucks, into the power units. I think the direction where we're going there, where that solution combined with solutions like is actually providing insight into what I would call primary data, focuses around getting enhanced ETA, getting better insights into your carbon footprint. So I think that's one clear area where the two services complement each other. Moving more into conditional cargo monitoring, I think that's more on Roambee's specialty there. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Jesper. I think if we look at the larger value proposition, it is a natural extension, if you think about it, to go from, either fleet data or telematics data aggregation into the monitoring of the cargo itself. And I think we're getting into a more real-time world whereby one could actually take action based on the information, as opposed to a more passive approach of just knowing where the cargo or the condition of the cargo is and not be able to take action. The other area that's of interest, and we'll talk more about it today, is the ability then to get into more specialized cargo and intermodal cargo, where there are more handoffs. And it's getting more difficult, if you will, to get all the aggregation both in time and accurately to the end consumer.
Absolutely, and really good points, making sure that it's in time, we're getting all the data that we need, and very much a huge value proposition to this partnership. And now what I want to do is, now we've laid out the value line, let's get into the detail of how we adopt this. So first of all, with you, Jesper, what things does a company need to take into consideration before they decide to take on telematics aggregation?
Yeah, so good question again. Going back to looking at, so telematics aggregation typically comes from the trucks, the power units. I would say probably around 80 to 90% of all the assets in our network is actually the power units. These power units are typically owned by trucking companies. So when you embark on this journey, you need to have a few things in mind, because the carrier, they have a lot of this data at hand because they use the existing TomTom, whatever onboard computer systems they're using. And you're basically, as a shipper, requesting quite sensitive data for a lot of these carriers to be shared when that particular carrier is working for you as a shipper. So as a shipper, you want to look into when you select a visibility provider or partner on this, what is the existing network? How well is the network already built out? But you also want to look at how is that network, how is that visibility provider interacting with both sides of the network? So you have these carriers that are being asked to share data. Well, what do they get back in return? It's very important that you create an environment where the carriers feel safe in sharing data, that they know that it's only the relevant data on their driving behaviors when that truck is doing a shipment or movement for the mutual client. I think also what we're seeing in moving forward is an important part for these carriers to feel that they actually get value from being a part of a network is what other options, what other services comes back in their way. So it's not a one-way street. we have a lot of offerings for carriers that, you have carriers that have a low level of technology adoption. They can get some of our free tools where they can better plan and optimize how to have an increased utilization of the fleet. So I think, to go back to your question, what is important for you as a shipper looking into establishing a telematics-driven network is really looking at service providers that is looking at both sides of the network, supporting both value propositions, but also already have a large and established network in the business.
Interesting. So very much making sure there's a large network within the business, and that people are willing to take this on board. And the same question to yourself, Vidya. What do companies need to take on board to take into consideration before they take on the sensor-driven visibility side of things?
Yeah, Scott. So, Jesper talked about just visibility and the ability at a minimum to have that through telematics aggregation, and being able to tie that into not just the location, but also the sort of sustainability aspects of it, including the carbon footprints, things of that nature. Extending that into where we look at sensor driven information coming directly from the cargo, you're looking at asking yourself a few questions. One of the things that our customers look for is OTIF, on time in full. And this typically means that when you've got several pallets or several containers in a load, you expect that to all arrive at the same time. In a large sort of distributed transportation network, be it intermodal or be it cross border, you could have a lot of situations where you have cross dock situations where you have handoffs between carriers. The handoffs could be just the tractor. The handoffs could be the trailer where you're moving cargo around. In situations such as this, the ability to have sensors on the cargo, the ability to be as close to the material that you're moving becomes very important. So companies looking to extend, if you will, visibility from data aggregation should look to ask themselves if they're in a situation where security is important. They're in a situation where cold chain management and monitoring becomes important. And what I talked about, OTIF, where you're looking to have all your material delivered at the same time. And so there's no short ships or things like that. Now, having talked about condition monitoring and security and the integrity of the shipment, if you will, the other overriding piece in this is the ability to be actionable. Not just wait for the information and then understand that something happened either in the ETA or in the handoffs or in the delivery, but to be actionable, especially when you're looking at condition such as cold chain, such as a breakage or damage to the product. So if any of those apply, then being able to react in real time or near real time becomes not only valuable, but it becomes has a direct impact, if you will, to the bottom line on that cargo movement.
Interesting. So it's very much having that actionable data in real time, and making sure that we have this. And this is very interesting to hear both your sides of this, so people can really see what they need to take into consideration to take on these solutions, and what is the value there for them. Now, I would like to, I do encourage everyone, please do ask your questions. Go to the Q&A. It's just the right, you can ask any of these guys questions. So I do encourage that, and we can stop for short Q&A breaks. So I do encourage you to ask your questions throughout the Q&A, and we'll stop as they come in. So I do encourage you guys to do that. So let's jump into the infrastructure needed. So everyone can know, okay, what's the infrastructure needed to adopt these solutions? Am I going to need a serious piece of infrastructure to adopt these solutions? So again, starting off with you, Jesper, is what infrastructure does a company need for them to adopt telematics aggregation?
Yeah, well, that's also a great question. So I think it's actually not so much about the shipper client's infrastructure. It's more, again, if we take that down, it's very similar maybe to the previous questions on what to look for. So You want to look at an infrastructure that actually accommodates the reality of the capacity market out there. Very often, the large shippers, they have their direct transport customers. That could be DSV, that could be the larger carriers. But reality is that 90% or a great part at least of all shipments is being subcontracted down further, and it's actually not the transport company who ends up moving the goods. It's actually one of their subcontractor. In order then to build that visibility network based upon the telematics, you need to build an infrastructure or a system as a visibility provider where the primary carrier can turn around in the platform and invite then their subcontractors, and then you build this multi-dimensional network. Another very important part of this is making sure that you will be able to collect which assets are actually then doing the shipments. And I think that's one of the larger challenges in the entire telematics tracking environment here, where Scott, you have 10 trucks, but the system needs to know which of your trucks you're planning to do that shipment with that day. That's again where it is not so much about system requirements for the people who's engaging and want to have visibility, but it's more about systems and capabilities of the platform that they are then interacting with in order to create that complete successful visibility. So I would more say it's a matter of good process around how to build your virtual network underneath, and good process on how the shipper or the carrier collaboratively are able to link up in an asset with a certain shipment. So you can pair that truck together with that shipment. And then on top of that is the same thing has to happen, that you need to allocate the portable IoT-based tracker to the same shipment. But I think Vijay can explain much more around that. But I think that's more on the system side. I would rather say it's more process. You need a good process for that.
Interesting. The same question to you, videos. What's the infrastructure people need to take into consideration when adopting sensor-driven visibility?
I think just taking on from Jesper, the key that that we look at when we look at portable sensors that that are monitoring the cargo is the fact that it should have a seamless experience. I think the more traditional approach that people have taken and had difficulty in scaled adoption, if you will, is just purchasing some sensors and putting them on certain shipments, and then looking to understand where it is. That tends to work if you're looking to do, one or two shipments or tens of shipments. But when you're doing thousands of shipments, it's really a service. And when I talk about a service, it talks about not just a sensor, but the entire environment. Jesper talked about the integrations, talked about how to make sure that the sensor is assigned to the cargo, and the cargo can then be tracked either through a bill of lading or a sales order or something else of that sort. From an infrastructure perspective, we look at really three different areas of sensors, if you will. At the very top, most people are familiar with cellular-based sensors, and these tend to be global. They could be deployed anywhere in the world and provide information. We call them direct to cloud, if you will. There's absolutely no infrastructure needed. The second tier of that is with Bluetooth sensors, if you will, and these require some sort of intermediary gateway, if you will, and that could be as simplistic as a mobile phone. It could be, infrastructure that's placed at certain logistics centers, and that works well for companies that manage their own infrastructure. It could be typically a freight forwarder, if you will, or companies that have product moving from two of their own facilities, so they can actually deploy this infrastructure. And last but not least, it's been around for a long time, are what we call radio frequency tags. And these are very, very cost effective, but again, drive to the fact that you need to have infrastructure that can basically interrogate these tags. So when we look at the sort of environment that a company needs to consider to extend visibility into real-time sensors, it should be a pretty seamless experience. The experience should be adding no more, if you will, procedures to the standard operations other than injecting a sensor. Look for a service provider, if you will, that can then take care of reusing the sensors where appropriate, being able to provide sensors at the origins anywhere in the world, if you will, especially if you're doing intermodal or you're doing air freight. The lanes become important, and so the reusability component also becomes important in scale. And last but not least, in all of this is the ability to manage the information that's coming in. One of the things to look forward to is not just to know where something, some part of your cargo is, but really to understand behavior on that cargo, and being able to then understand what one can do based on that behavior. So, for example, if a sensor is telling you that your ETA is going to be delayed, if you will, is there something that can be done based on resource allocations at the receiving end to support it? Real-time communications tend to have certain sort of interesting nuances to the business, especially providing you the ability to not just ingest that information, but to do something about it. Today's real-time sensors have gone beyond when a cargo is going to arrive, but really telling you how it's behaving along the way. So, for example, if there's areas where there's a security concern, it can monitor things differently. If there's areas where you know that the cold chain is going to be compromised, such as in an airport ramp or something else like that, being able to then push that information upstream so someone can pay more attention or talk to a freight forwarder to intervene in case of a deviation, if you will. So infrastructure per se is not required with real-time sensors, but a transformation in the business process would be important with all of this additional information coming in, and being able to manage that information and effectively turn it around to make sure that your business is run more efficiently, if you will.
Interesting. So it's very much not just knowing where these where shipments are in real time, but it's actually learning the behavior, and that's really just a different element of action in supply chain, to learn the behavior of your lanes and learn what's going on and why these things are happening. And it's just a very different level of insight, which is really exciting to me and really interesting to see coming to life in this webinar as well. I would actually like to go to a short Q&A break, because I can see that we've got some questions coming in here. So I'll go to, oh, fantastic. I can see lots of questions coming in here. Please do, guys, ask as many as you want. You've got these guys to speak to for any questions at them. They'll be happy to answer. So please do. I urge you to throw them in there. Don't be scared. Just throw your questions in there. So I'll start off with Brian Johnson. And this is, how are IoT sensors different from traditional data loggers / RFID tags? Well, direct that one to you, Vidya.
That's a very good question, and I think I touched upon it a little bit. Passive data loggers, if you will, were traditionally built to provide the end user, if you will, at the end of a shipment, a very simple sort of is everything okay, or should I do something about it? While they log the data, very few customers really look inside the data if they don't think there was a deviation in the condition. So, for example, if I've got, cold chain operation and I wanted to make sure that, say, for life sciences, it was supposed to be between 2 degrees and 8 degrees. If it was during the shipment, the passive logger would give you some haptic response, either in terms of, a blinking light or a screen that says everything is good. And most people at that time take that as, I'm good to release the shipment and go. With IoT sensors, and I'll get to RFID in a second, with IoT sensors, we're not only able to tell you across the journey what the temperature patterns were, but take that information and tell you certain behaviors. Are we getting close to deviation? In some cases, deviation is okay, where we look at what we call mean kinetic temperature, which means where you in a deviation situation for an extended period of time, which could really affect the cargo. And a simple example there is in a cold chain application, a lot of times people open and close the doors of a truck. And you could have a change in temperature for a very short period of time because that door was opened. But that doesn't necessarily drive to spoilage or anything of that sort. And something like that, a passive data logger would never even tell you, because you're not going in to look at that information at that granularity to say that potentially that could be compromised if the door was left open for an extended period of time. RFID tends to be more around the retail supply chain and inventory, where you need to have an interrogator, if you will. You need to have radio energy put into the tag to be able to read it. Two problems occur with RFID. One of them is 100% read. It's very, very difficult to get to that level, and the industry has been struggling with that for a while. The second is the type of material that you're trying to track. RFID tags tend to work really well when there's a non-liquid environment. So if you're looking at a lot of pharmaceutical product, or you're looking at a lot of food and beverage, including cold chain, RFID tags don't work as well in that capacity. And needless to say, they require very specialized infrastructure. So the commonality between RFID and IoT sensors is now coming to Bluetooth, which is a common standard that can be read with any mobile phone. So you're seeing a movement where RFID will continue to be sort of very prolific in inventory in retail, and you're looking to see Bluetooth and IoT sensors drive away from the passive data logger, if you will.
Interesting. And just to sort of push that question a little bit more forward as well with you, Jesper, is this very much why a lot of the points where video raised there, why you saw IoT sensors as a great value for partnership rather than maybe the also of loggers and RFID tags when it comes to the aggregation of side?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And I think we also see that very large shippers, they tend to have very different type of goods they're shipping around, and a lot of those, what I would say, I would consider that the general cargo market, where they just want to have an insight on what's the ETA, where on other shipments they want to have much more detailed health monitoring of the goods. And I think that's where these partnerships make a lot of sense. Because we as a platform is not focusing on IoT, but we want to have partners like Roambee that actually feed that data in, and then it becomes a question whether what data goes which way. If we have mutual clients, and those mutual clients have one system of engagement, they don't necessarily want to have 6 different screens and they need to go here and there. And that's why I believe these partnerships is so important, because we want to be an open platform where one of your clients, if we have the same client, if they put your trackers on 20% of their shipments or 50%, we are happy to take that into our platform. So I think that where it start to make sense to solving the actual client's visibility challenges, instead of positioning people competitive against each other, where the solutions are actually very complementary.
Interesting, and really good points you raised there. And I'm actually going to stay with you, yes, but there's another question here I can see that's getting lots of upvotes from Lydia Riggy. I really hope I said that right. Lydia, so when you talk about data aggregation, what are the different streams of data one could possibly aggregate?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think engineers, they would say everything is possible to data aggregate. I think that the limitations more lies within what is the common lowest denominator across. So looking at the telemetrics, and here I'm talking about the telemetrics on trucks or trailers. We are connected to more than, I believe, 700 different telemetric systems. They all behave a little different. They all have a little different way when they create an event, when the truck is stopped, or so forth. And I think when we're then doing that aggregation, there's a tremendous amount of mapping. So one thing is mapping the geolocations. That's one thing, but there's so many different data points that these different telematics providers are collecting. So it's difficult sometimes to actually completely map that out, because you need to make some logic on what happens if this data goes this way or that way, north or south. And if those data points is not on this other carrier, which is using a different telemetrics, it makes it a little difficult to make a unified data model on that. One thing could be if you were connecting to trailers, how do you collect and normalize tire pressure? It's not all of the telemetric systems that would connect to tire pressure. We talked about refrigerated movements. Where is the sensors, the inflow, the outflow of, is it the 6-compartment, 5-compartment trailer? It's very difficult. And that's why it also makes a lot of sense that when you have high value cargo in a cold chain, that you actually do put IoT devices on and focus on the health. And then we are focusing on these other things where I see a certain trend towards the sustainability, hours of service compliance in Working Labor Act, that the drivers are not working too many hours across a week or a month. They need to take their breaks. All of these things is where we collect from the power unit on the primary data. And that's where there's a good balance between what we are solving and what our partners are solving on the IoT space.
Interesting. No, really appreciate your answer on that, Jesper. This is what they're here to. There's going to be some tricky questions. There's going to be some really detailed questions. They want to know what is the value here. So it's really exciting to be able to have you guys on here and be able to just answer these. It's really good to see. So I can see there's some more other questions. What I'll do is I'll take one more question, then we'll answer the rest later in the webinar. So I'll take one more, as I can see it's had twice as much upvotes since the last 5 minutes. So from Rama, could you please explain again the solution for intermodal shipments? What's the best option to track them if they have GPS or if they don't? So I'll direct this to you, Vidya.
Intermodal has, and Jesper can jump in too. Intermodal has, a few interesting nuances. One of them clearly is the fact that there's multi modes of transport, typically, and the most common could be truck, ocean, truck, or truck through air freight, and then truck. And anytime we look at a situation where there's a transport change, it becomes very interesting to not just track the transport, but to track the container within the transport, especially if you're looking at less than truckload, if you will, or palletized shipments where you don't own the entire container. With intermodal, I think the baseline, especially with ocean cargo, is done really well. So Transporeon, if you will, can really track the vessel, can track port information, can track the handoffs at every event. Where we extend that into an IoT sensor-based intermodal is to then be able to tell you the sort of movement between those intermodes. So, for example, when product leaves your facility and it reaches a port, where is it stored in the port? Did it clear customs? Is it waiting for customs? If you're looking at a transshipment, which means a smaller vessel moves the product into a bigger vessel, are you able to effectively tell if you're going to make that transshipment or not? And these become very important, especially when you're looking at feeder ports and things like that. One of the important things that we look at, even though we have an IoT sensor, is the ability to mix that information with the actual carrier. So, for example, if it's air freight, we want to basically not only track the IoT sensor, but track the tail number of the flight. And that brings us, really, really important information, because if you look at a lot of air cargo that is going on non-commercial aircraft, it's difficult to really understand the actual movement. An example would be for Europe to the United States. If something leaves Central Europe, and it's supposed to go into the middle of the country, can either come into, say, New York or Chicago or to Atlanta, and then be trucked over while you're still thinking it's air freight. So the ability to track the intermediary carrier as well as the IoT sensor becomes important on intermodal.
Interesting. And Jesper, is there anything you'd like to add to that question?
No, I think that's very accurate. So I don't think I can add any more value there.
You've covered it, Vidya. You've absolutely covered it. No, fantastic. Really appreciate the questions there, guys. And please do carry on. We will have a bit more time towards the end of the webinar. So please do send more questions through. So I'm going to carry on with the questioning of the webinar. So what I want to understand now, and firstly with you, Jesper, is if you already have sensor-driven visibility in your company today, already have sensor-driven visibility, then what would be the process to integrate telematics aggregation into that solution already?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there's probably then a few things that I would highlight, and I probably already touched upon one in one of the previous questions. But one thing I probably have not touched upon so much is when you want to build a visibility network out of aggregated data from your carrier network. I spoke around the tools, how the tools have to be able to build that network. We talked about want to provide value to the carriers that are a part of the network. And then the last thing that is also important that I don't think I mentioned before is you will need to basically build up this network of consent as well, because you're actually going into other people's data network. So that's not only a GDPR question. You're often following a truck where you have a driver, so you need to be GDPR cautious. You want to be GDPR compliant as a provider. But as a client of building the network, they basically need to build this consent network, which will then follow this multi-level or multi-dimensional subcontracted network. So let's just say that I'm a large shipper and you're my primary carrier, Scott. You will then give me a consent that I'm allowed to follow your trucks when they work for me. But then you turn around and you use a subcontractor. You do the same, and then you build a consent network. So you have these layered levels of consent that all in all stack together, makes me be able to receive data from one of your subcontractors, looking it's like it's your truck, even that is actually not your truck. So that's just another angle of what's required to build this sort of open network, which is different from using a more closed IoT-based network. The other thing that I already touched upon is, I think this is why these partnerships are important. It's important if you using IoT based and you want to go to use more general cargo tracking, you don't want to have yet another system. You want to actually have partners that can work together. I think the way we look at it is our clients, they choose their primary system of engagement, that being the OTM or SAP or whatever type of system they're using. We will then feed data into that. If they're using our platform as their primary system of engagement, we will be happy to take any of our partners' data and visualize it to the level and on item level. But then when they want to do a deep dive, they probably will jump directly to your platform. Or it could be the other way around, depending on what is the purpose, where the clients come from. We just want to solve the industry's challenges, and it shouldn't be a battle around it's my UI or my UI is more pretty than your UI and so on. It has to focus around solving the challenges for the clients. I think that's probably one of the most important things to set up this type of services.
I love that. I love your saying system of engagement. I really like that saying. And I love how your answer was so around collaboration. It's not my UI, your UI. It's the best solution that for the situation. It's the best solution for the customer. And I love that approach and something we encourage. And it's really good to see this more and more in the industry. And really a huge part of what this webinar is about is encouraging that and seeing what Roambee and Transporeon are doing today. And before we jump into the next question, Vidya, is there anything you'd like to add to that collaboration side of things on encouraging that within the industry? Is there anything you'd like to add on that?
I think it's crucial, and I think it's imperative that that enterprises look at um, this as just visibility, whether it's aggregated or whether it's coming from an IoT sensor. They both bring different types of information into the end enterprise, if you will. Jesper touched upon some very important things. The ultimate goal in all of this is not a dot on the map. It
Mm.
is a business outcome. Is my cargo going to be delayed? Is my cargo condition as it should be? And from an enterprise's perspective, I couldn't agree more. You can't have five different systems, if you will. If you're looking at a primary ERP system, as Jesper talked about, could be SAP, could be Oracle, then even the sort of data collectors, if you will, both IoT and aggregated, should feed that ERP system. So you have a single point of action, a single point of knowledge collection, and that way different departments can use that information as they see fit. Most people think of this level of visibility as just going into the logistics teams or the supply chain teams, but it's really the sales teams. It's really the end consumer of that information, which is not the person moving the product. They can give you information about it. So when we look at this partnership, we're looking at that level of enriched information that the business can take and then make it actionable within their enterprise, if you will.
No, great answer, and really good to see this. And I will just go to the same question with you now, Vidya, on what I asked Jesper. If a company currently had telematics aggregation, had Transporeon involved right now in their supply chains, what would be the process of integrating sensor-driven visibility into the mix of their supply chain?
I think it's sort of an inevitable extension, if you will.
Mm.
So Jesper touched upon visibility, which is from the fundamentals. It starts either from a sales order or a bill of lading. It's not so much about where is it, but it's about the integrity of the entire shipment and what its impact is to the larger supply chain, if you will. So when we look at companies that, and most of our customers typically have access to that level of visibility, we look at it saying it's not that 100% of your shipments will require IoT sensors today. So how do we identify which one of those, and then look at a single pane of glass? So when we're working with Transporeon, if you will, it's a single pane of glass. You've got Transporeon already. We're going to feed that information in there, and now it's enriched information. You can do more automation. You can have better visibility, and it takes away some of those, if you will, edge risks that Jesper touched upon, where there are certain handoffs to certain carriers that might not be part of the integrated aggregation, if you will. So to us, IoT sensors don't live alone. They live within an environment of a larger visibility system, if you will. And so we encourage our customers not to think of them as one or the other. We encourage customers to think of it as what is the level of visibility you need based on the type of product that you're moving. So, for example, if you're purely e commerce and last mile, you might have a completely different need as opposed to intermodal cross border, if you will. Within Europe, for example, if you're moving trucked product across different countries, the levels of risk increase. Now, with the movement, say, from Europe into the UK, if you will, you're going to have a lot of customs clearance, and you're going to have potential wait times. And these could affect security, these could affect the condition of product, things of that nature. So to us, it's the extension, really, of going from the aggregated visibility and telematics into the IoT sensors for the products and the sort of trade lanes that you think it's important to have that additional real-time information.
Fantastic. Yeah, I like that. Very much an extension of visibility. I really like that answer. So thank you for that video. I will get to the question. I can see some questions coming in, but I think we'll just hit off with this final question to the speakers, and then we'll get into a final Q&A with everyone. And this is the question that I think most people will be interested in, really, because we've spoken about, okay, what's the value of both solutions? What do I need to do to, if I stand on currently telematics aggregators, or I currently have Transporeon, or I currently have Roambee, what do I do? How do I adopt both solutions, and why do I do it? And now this final question is, okay, what industries and use cases have we identified that would benefit from utilizing both solutions, both telematics aggregation, both Transporeon, and both Roambee? So, and feel free to spend a bit more time on this answer, because I think it's important we really bring to life with real life examples that we've identified, um, um, that would bring this to life, to show where these solutions would really complement one another as an extension in the industry and for a particular use case. So I will start with you, Jesper. So please fire away, and yeah, let's really bring this to life, some real life examples.
Okay, I think I'm gonna, in terms of the industry on the type of visibility that we're doing, we see interest from all different industries, both the freight forwarder industry, because they need to have control of their own network, their subcontractors, when they are requested to deliver visibility upstream towards the large shippers, manufacturers, producers. But more on, we've been looking at all of these, how does these things work together? Well, I can give some examples on some interesting situations where I will definitely see that it's not either or, it's actually both. I've seen situations where you have large retailers, large shippers, which is using drop trailers. So a lot of their logistics operations is centered around that they have agreement with large carriers. The large carriers, they drop a bunch of trailers at the yard, and then they start filling up the trailers. If that trailer has a high value shipment on it, I think it will natural then you often put on then an IoT tracking device. What often happens around these large warehouses is you fill up the trailer then, but you then contract a carrier to come with only a power unit, or for the carrier to come back and pick up his own trailer. And then you actually want to know, where is he now? Is he inbound at time? Is he coming up? You schedule a 4 p.m. pickup, but he needs to be there at 4 p.m. because if you fill up the trailer and you fill a lot of them, you just create congestions at these yards. And the only way to actually get insight around how the carrier is inbound on the power unit only is through the power units, through the telematic systems on the trucks. On the other side also, you can see the reverse. So he picks up this trailer and he's going down and he's then delivering it through dropping the trailer. We see often where you have, as a carrier or as a large shipper, you are met with claims, you did not deliver at time, you got 6 hours delayed. The shipper don't really know what happened. So you can actually sometimes see that the trailer was dropped, you monitor your goods there, and then you can see that the truck start moving away. So there was no problems in terms of congestions. So this is more like some of the use cases where it's not either or, but where you have multiple sensing points, and when they drive together as a train, then that's great, but you can also actually learn a lot of value from when you suddenly start seeing, and I'm only talking location data here, that hey, the goods is standing still, but the truck is moving in whatever order on where it is in the flow. So that's more like a use case where it makes a lot of sense. And then I think I'll let you, Vijay, talk about more on the different verticals on the sensitivity.
Thanks, Jesper. I think there's one point you made that's so important that people sort of don't grab the nuance of, which is when we use IoT sensors, we're tracking the cargo. But on the drop trailer, it's so important to understand where that tractor is coming from. There's no IoT sensor on that. You need to be able to then say that if my pickup is at 1 o'clock and that tractor isn't there, or the tractor isn't been allocated, the IoT sensor won't be able to tell you that there's a problem. The IoT sensor can tell you when the cargo starts moving. if you will. That's why the symbiotic relationship is so important to where we look at things, saying that it's not that everything has a sensor, but there are disparate systems in our supply chain, such as the power unit, such as the load, such as a vessel moving things. For us, the obvious sort of must-have industries for IoT sensors tend to be around condition. If you've got condition around cold chain, if you've got condition around, if you will, spoilage and damage, it makes perfect sense. So, for example, life sciences will really go to all product tracked through IoT sensors at some point in time, which would lead to a transformation of the passive data logger. And I think, Scott, you did talk about that in Basel a few weeks ago, where the future of the data logger is real time. The other industry that we see a lot of sort of need for this is air freight. You're moving air cargo because of the sensitivity of time and the condition of movement. And when you're looking at the handoffs, there's a lot less information, if you will, from when a carrier hands it off to either the cargo airline or the commercial airline, and the receipt and pickup, because there's a lot of handoff touch points. And especially if you're moving cargo that's time sensitive through this corridor, then that information becomes important to understand. So the verticals, as we look at, could be life sciences, high tech, especially around spoilage and high value, and food and beverage, because it's a less sort of tracked but highly needed regulated environment where we need to monitor the condition of either frozen food or food on the last mile, if you will, to understand spoilage and overall shelf life. I think that's another piece that's not looked at in detail, whereby changes in temperature and condition, especially on long transfers in a truck, can affect the overall shelf life of this product, not just have spoilage at the point of delivery, if you will. So when we consider all of these, we're looking at not just the ability to know that it was delivered on time at the right destination, but also the manner in which it was transported, if you will. So life sciences, high tech, food and beverage tend to be very, very sort of directly in line to extend aggregated visibility into IoT visibility.
Fantastic. I think between you two guys, we've really been able to now lay out the value of the partnership and collaboration and the detail involved to adopt both solutions, and really the real life examples, as we've just said there, of where does this sit, and it's quite clearly it's very much an extension and works very much as you said, symbiotically together in a lot of use cases, and this is so good to see, and really good, and I hope everyone here is really gaining some really good knowledge here, and maybe some new knowledge here, and it's something that I feel is going to make people think after this webinar, which is really, really good to see. I do see there's some questions, so we have about 5 minutes left, so I'll go to those two questions to see what we have here. So you're testing me with the name. So Giuseppe, you're asking, the issue with these devices is how to get them back from the transport companies or customer consignees, and of course the according logistics around these devices. Any smart solution for this? So I know we have something in place for this, so I'm sure Vidya, you'll be able to answer this side of things.
It's one of the core considerations when looking at IoT sensors. IoT sensors tend to have a price point today where single use is still difficult to justify, if you will. So I touched upon this in the very beginning. Look for a partner that can work with understanding your trade lanes, understanding the origins and destinations, and putting together a reverse logistics process that can basically manage the reusability of these sensors. One of the approaches to that reverse logistics approach really is understanding how to aggregate sensors at the destination. So, if you will, setting up a process whereby when product is delivered, that the IoT sensors are aggregated and put into some sort of collection mechanism that can be returned. Look for a service provider that is global. So not only can they, provide the sensors at the origin in time and in scale, but also look to have that level of pickup service, if you will, at the destinations. We use a variety of different methods, if you will, to manage the reverse logistics. In some cases, it's a prepaid, if you will, pickup service through one of the major couriers. In other cases, we use very specialized local courier pickups, especially in Asia and parts of Africa, where we have localized transport providers go to these destinations and pick up these sensors and then bring it back to a consolidation center. One of the things that we've been able to do in scale is to have our own logistics providers, our 3PLs, if you will, in the Americas, in Europe, and in Asia, to be able to provide these sensors on demand to our customers wherever they might be in the supply chain, if you will.
Fantastic. Thank you for that video. I feel like it was very informative and really got into the detail to answer that for you, Giuseppe. One final question, we'll just get it in, is from Sean Cooper, and I'll start with you, Jesper, on this one, is does Sixfold and Roambee integrate and allow partner to control data, ownership / management, as a co-partner to go further if client has their own cloud storage to control client's data?
Can I get that question? Let me see again.
Yes. So basically, does Sixfold and Roambee integrate and allow a partner to control data, so to own and have management of their data?
Okay. So, well, I was just putting on the control. I was thinking something else. So, I think visibility in general has to come as you have visibility is a data as a service product. It's a DaaS product, if you ask me. You do have visualization, which is, in my mind, at least what we are looking at, is that is our suggestion for how the best possible UI would be designed. But I think fundamentally, when you subscribe to a visibility service, you get data as a service as well. And the visualization, as I said, is something that we are representing in a way that we feel is the best, what we learned across all the clients. When that data is then pushed into our clients, they can put it in their BI systems. They can store and keep that data. That data is still already been selected in, so then they will never get data which is not a part of their supply chain data. So you get, if you have a carrier with 1,000 trucks and you follow his entire fleet, you still only take that singularized data on that particular truck in that time span, whereas he's doing that shipment for you as a shipper. That data will be fed to you as well through an API. Of course, it's going to be visualized. So if that's answered the question, in terms of they're allowed to keep that data, then the question would be yes. It's a part of the service. It's a part of basically the product on that. And I'm not. I think I'll have to pass it on to you, Vijay, on the IoT generated data, on the Roambee data. What that means?
Yeah, I think, Jesper, you touched upon it. There's sort of three layers the way I see it. One is the data generated by the IoT sensor itself. That's made available to anybody that's subscribing to it. The second is the time-bound nature of that. So the IoT sensor has the same situation as a vehicle where it can be reused across multiple customers. So we time scale that data, and for that period of shipment, that IoT data is available. And the third piece is any aggregated data that can describe the shipment, be it a bill of lading, be it container IDs, things of that nature that provide sort of a closer tie to what is actually being moved. And we provide all of that data to our partners, and our partners can then host it themselves. They can do further aggregation or integration to an ERP system, if you will. So we tend to keep individual clients' data separate for a variety of reasons, but anybody that's subscribing to that and has the authority to see it, they can pull that data, store it, and even aggregate it in their own cloud.
Fantastic. And we're just finishing in the nick of time, I can see here. So that's really good. And of course, guys, if there's any more questions, please do keep sending them through. And we'll make sure they're answered in the coming days after this webinar. Of course, this webinar, it's all about being the collaboration is key. And it's very much what Roambee and both Transporeon saw here. And it's very much we're trying to drive this forward within the industry to like Jesper said, making sure we give the customer exactly what they need. It's no ours or theirs. It's what do you need? This is the best solution for you. And this is key. And we hope to encourage both at Roambee and Transporeon. And we appreciate you joining us on this journey to learn more about this. And we thank you wherever you are. I know it may be very late where you are, or maybe early morning, or maybe even the middle of the workday. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day today to watch this webinar. We will make sure we send it to you recorded so you can go through, make notes, and maybe you've got some further questions. Of course, if you do have any further questions, please do not hesitate. Just go to our social medias at Transporeon, at Roambee, on any of our social media handles. And please do reach out to us there, comment, like, and let us know. If you have any further questions, please do. I do encourage that to go on social media and do that. And of course, if you've I hope that you've learned a lot from this webinar. And of course, if there's something you would like to learn a bit more about, I encourage you to reach out to Transporeon and Roambee as well, just to learn a bit more. As you can see, there's so much value from this collaboration, and a lot of value we could bring to your company as well. So thank you so much, guys, and thank you to you, Jesper, and thank you to you, Vidya. I really appreciate you coming onto the webinar today.
Thank you, Jesper. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the opportunity to talk and meet you guys again.
Thanks so much. Just for the social media guys, we'll just do a bit of a wave. I know they like this. If you just throw a hand up, two hands up, whatever you like to, just a bit of a wave. Thank you so much, guys. Hope you have a wonderful night, day, morning, wherever you are in the world. All the best.
Thank you.
Thanks.